So, I'm gonna take you back to 2012, which is like 8 years ago, which is insane to think about. Before we get into that, FPSs have been along for quite a long time. They've been around for longer than I've been born. They have had multiple entries. Multiple is a very huge understatement. FPSs are one of the most common game genres. If you don't know what an FPS is, it is a first-person shooter. First person meaning the view, the camera view, meaning in first person, the player is the character. So the camera is as if the player is actually the character. So the camera is the character's eyes, if you will. Third person is you watching someone else's story. So the camera is directed at the character which the player is playing. So first person shooters would be Call of Duty and the likes. And third person shooters would be Uncharted, Tomb Raider, Witcher, GTA, all these games. Now, don't ask what second person is, it doesn't exist. Theories about it are around, but we're not going to get into that. That's not our topic today. FPS has been around for a long time, and they've had amazing games. But I can't remember the last time I played an FPS that was actually really good after Far Cry 3. Far Cry 3 came out in 2012. It was a Ubisoft game. Back when Ubisoft was Ubisoft, not Ubisoft. Far Cry 3 is a fantastic game. It's one of the best games ever made. Arguably the best Far Cry in the franchise. But it's between that and Far Cry 2. But I'm gonna leave the rest for the audio Carl, not the video Carl. And the thing is, as amazing as Far Cry 3 was, I wonder if it was the last properly good first-person shooter. Stick around, we'll find out together.
So, Far Cry 3. I'm not going to talk about the entire franchise, I'm just going to talk about Far Cry 3 because each game has its own story. Now, I'm going to try to keep this as concise as possible. I won't go into the details of the story, but there will probably be a lot of spoilers because I want to talk about the things which I need to talk about in this game because there's a lot to uncover. But I also can't go into details because this would take too fucking long. I've tried to record this video like 5 times at this point. It's proving to be a bit hard to not talk about everything. The game follows Jason Brody, his older brother Grant, his younger brother Riley, and their group of friends Lisa, Daisy, Keith, and Oliver. They were going on a trip around Asia, and they ended up going skydiving above the Rook Islands where the game takes place. Long story short, the game starts off with a bit of a montage, very neatly put together. Montage ends, it pans out of a phone, and turns out you're being held captive by the main villain of the game called Vaas. Vaas is one of the best video game characters of all time, and arguably the best villain in a video game ever. He's a very, very, very interesting and very good character. Now, long story short, this is a human trafficking organization. Human trafficking place where you're being held captive. And after Vaas leaves, the way that the game starts off is your older brother Grant escapes being tied up because he is a US vet and he has experience with that shit. He gets you out of your things and you're gonna try to escape the area. Grant takes out 2 guards in the process, killing one and heavily injuring one. And Jason's fucking freaking out. You gather your things and you're gonna try to escape to help out your other brother and the rest of your friends. Now, what happens is Vaas ends up killing Grant. He shoots him, and this is a very beautiful scene because you're trying to stop Grant's bleeding, but you obviously fail, and you cannot hear Vaas is talking in the back, but you can't hear a fucking word. It's very muffled, and your entire world is this: your brother bleeding out. And this really helps Jason. Grant's death is a major thing about what Jason turns into later on. Vaas then's like, oh, fuck it, run. Just to have fun. Which is part of how fucking great Vaas is, because he didn't have to talk to you when you were in the cage. He could have just let you be, but he wanted to have his fucking fun. So he tells you to run, so you run. Then along the way, one of Vaas's pirates jumps on you and tries to stab you and kill you. In self-defense, you kill him. Now this is a huge turning point because this is the first kill of many that Jason has. But this one feels wrong because he's never killed anyone before, and it's in self-defense, and he feels fucking terrified about it. As you're running, you fall into a river, a hand swoops in, takes you out. That's how the game starts off. That hand was Dennis. Dennis is a side character along the main story of the game. Nothing too notable about Dennis, he's just there for a part of the game. And it's a great fucking start to a video game. One of the best starts to any fucking video games. After that, you end up waking up and Dennis was giving you these tattoos. The tattoos are a very neat feature the game has. Basically, there's a skill tree, and every time you acquire a skill, it appears as a tattoo on your arm, filling up the sleeve as you go. Something very interesting is that the more the sleeve gets filled, the less of Jason you have. The Jason loses himself. He becomes this killing machine, which makes him lose who he actually is. Part of that is because, most of that is because he's not grieving his brother's death. He's not giving himself that chance. In real life, people do that. They distract themselves from grieving or mourning a death by distracting themselves with other tasks. At this point, Jason is distracting himself with staying with his friends and killing pirates, which is a noble activity, I guess. Now, the entirety of the game is you trying to help your friends escape and just leave, or that's what you think it was. Again, I'm not going to go into the depths of the story, because there's a lot to uncover there, but basically there are three main villains of the game. Vaas, obviously, a later villain which you then discover his name is Buck. I'm not going to talk much about Buck, other than he was a major turning point in Jason's character development. Then Hoyt, Vaas's boss, which is the second portion of the game. And then arguably the fourth villain being Citra. Basically, the only ally faction in this entire game are called the Rakyat. They are the jungle warriors, as they're later referred to. And they're led by Citra. Citra is Vaas's sister. Vaas, you would assume, is the bad guy. Citra is the good guy. Good girl. But anyway, what you find out later on is that maybe there's more to read there than white and black. Maybe there's that gray area which is dominating this entire island, which is definitely the case. Vaas has multiple monologues in the game where he has you captured for 50 fucking times. I'm not sure how you managed to escape every single time, but one of the times he mentions family, and he mentions that the first person that he killed was for his sister. But it wasn't good enough for her, and he goes on this rant, and he has this nervous chuckle at the end of it. He's like, well, fuck it, and he leaves you to die, which you end up escaping either way. But Citra's side of the story is that Hoyt seduced Vaas with money and drugs and turned him over to the dark side. That's what you would think, but based on Vaas's story, things don't add up. There's no real reason for Vaas to make up that story. Why would he even talk about it to a person who she's killing? Wouldn't make sense for him to be lying. So honestly, I'd believe Vaas over Citra, especially how the game turns out at the end. Now, long story short, you do end up saving your friends, and your girlfriend Lisa, she's trying to keep you grounded all this time. Like, don't forget who you are. You're Jason. You get these tattoos. You have these guns. I'm afraid that you're turning into something else. Jason's like, don't fucking worry about it. I'm good. Along the way, you get all your friends together after killing Vaas. Now, Vaas's boss fight was interesting to say the least, because you go over to his compound wanting to kill him, and Vaas was expecting you. You weren't catching him by surprise at all. But in his fight scene, you realize that it's the psychedelic session, okay? The psychedelic section, which takes place multiple times in the game. For each boss or for each section, or the Vaas section is that as you're walking over to Vaas, you see these visions left and right. And there's these visions where these moments that Jason had with Citra or his friends or what have you, and Vaas is switching places with Jason in these scenes, which says a lot. There's a lot to uncover there, but I won't get into the details of that. You reach Vaas, and he doesn't fight back. You go for a couple swipes, but he just blocks a couple, evades a couple, and then you stab him, and he didn't attack. He didn't try to attack you. And when you stab him, he doesn't seem sad, like, holy shit. He doesn't seem surprised, like, oh my god, he actually killed me. He seems a bit content. He's almost as if, well, fucking finally, I'm done with this shit. And there's a lot to read into as Vaas as a character, because Vaas he's a pivotal character. He has to exist for the Far Cry 3 experience to be there. Why I say that? One of the monologues that Vaas has, thinking that he was going to kill Jason, his iconic scene of, do you know the definition of insanity? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results every time. And he said that the person who told him that, he didn't believe him, he thought he was bullshitting him, so he shot him. which is ironic because Vas told you that and you ended up killing him, so you're not ending the cycle, which is partially why you and Vas are switching places in that psychedelic section. This is an example of what I mean by there's a lot of shit to uncover in Far Cry 3. There's a lot of shit to read into, and there's a lot of stuff that you gotta mention, but I can't because it's gonna take way too long. Longer than I'm comfortable with overtaking. So you end up saving your friends and killing Vas. You think that that's it, you're gonna leave now, right? Well, no. Jason's lost at this point. He's just gone. Keith told him that they killed his younger brother Riley, so that's it. He's fucking gone mad. He tells him to leave, he's not going with him, so Daisy and Lisa are like, you fucking idiot. Oliver's like, I'm staying with you, and Jason's like, nah, you're staying with her, and you can't stay here, you gotta tell my mom. And Keith is like, well, good luck, man. You go over, and the plan is to infiltrate Hoyt's privateers, his army, and kill him there. You meet Sam along the way. Sam is a lighthearted, really cool character, the only friendly face that you have in the second section of the game. And basically the plan was to infiltrate Hoyt and kill him. So you do infiltrate, you go on a couple missions with Sam. Sam is a trusted member of the army. So at one point Hoyt wants to meet with you, so he meets with you, you're undercover, and part of why you're undercover is, part of you being a privateer is because you have to hide your tattoos, because that's the only thing that Hoyt knows about you, these famous tattoos. Which is interesting, because I'll get into that in a bit. So Hoyt's like, after a long conversation, he's like, okay, well, I have this prisoner down there, I want you to beat the fuck out of him, interrogate him, and then leave. I'm gonna be watching in the cameras. So you go down there, and it turns out that's your brother Riley. He wasn't dead, he was being held captive. So you beat the fuck out of him for a bit. Sam hacks into the cameras. He's like, well, what the fuck, we gotta get you out of here. Sam's like, we can get out of here because Hoyt will kill us all. So Jason now has to beat the fuck out of his younger brother, leave, and then come back for him later on. Which Jason does. He beats the ever-loving shit out of him, and then he has this bullet wound on his shoulder. He presses into that. And then Jason's like, what the fuck have I become? I mentioned the privateer suit covering his tattoos. Yes, it was because to cover that he was Jason, but it also covers the tattoos. It covers what he's becoming, and it's interesting that with his tattoos being covered, he's like, what the fuck am I doing? What am I becoming? Not being able to see the tattoos, what he's become, he finally has a chance to stand back and be like, what? At one point he has this conversation with Daisy where he's like, first man I killed felt so wrong, but now it feels like winning. And she's like, are you good? He's like, I'm fine, don't worry about it. And Jason is such an interesting character. And it's all of this again is because he's not dealing with the death of his brother. Long story short, there's this poker game that you go to with Sam, and the plan is to kill Hoyt there. Thing is, Hoyt isn't dumb. He knows that you're Jason Brody, so he kills Sam, which is fucking terrible, by the way, because I really liked Sam. But you learn to not latch on to characters you like in these types of games. But anyway, you're sitting there, you play a game of poker, and no matter what you do, you always lose, and Hoyt chops off a finger. You have this hand-to-hand combat section with Hoyt, you kill Hoyt, you go over, you save your brother, and you go over to Earnhardt's place. Now, who is Earnhardt? I'm not sure if I mentioned him. Earnhardt is this dude that deals drugs basically to the Voss's pirates, and he's this cool, chill, laid-back dude, but he's on drugs all the time. He's on shrooms all the time. His backstory is that his young daughter Agnes fell out of the 10-story building and she died. So he escaped London and came to Rook Island to forget all that, which is why he's always high. So you agreed to hide all your friends over at Earnhardt because it's hidden in plain sight and they wouldn't look there. But when you go over to Earnhardt after you get Riley, the place is fucking destroyed and you see Earnhardt bleeding out. He's like, I'm sorry, I couldn't stop the Jungle Warriors. They took your friends to the temple. And he dies. So you take Riley to the temple, you're like, I gotta find out what the fuck's going on here. You go to the temple and Citra's there. She takes your brother captive and she drugs you. You wake up, you're like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. You have this weird psychedelic moment where Lisa, again, the only one who's trying to keep you grounded, you have these visions of her taking your tattoos off, and there was this knife which you had to get halfway through the game. Again, I'm not gonna go into terrible details. And she takes that away from you, basically. And you're back to the normal Jason Brody, which is very essential to that vision, because she's in your subconscious. Lisa is there to keep you grounded, even when she's not physically there. After the vision ends, you have the knife to Lisa's throat, so you can either kill your friends or save them. Now, if you kill your friends, you have the ceremonial reproduction, the ceremonial intercourse with Citra. She ends up killing you at the end of that, like literally right after you finish, saying that, you know, you still have bonds to your past world, so the baby born out of this will be the perfect warrior, which is a shitty way to die, I guess. And the proper ending, which really goes with the character development, what have you, would be to save your friends. So you save your friends, he throws the knife, he's like, I'm done with this fucking violence, I'm done with this shit. Then Dennis comes along again. He's like, Citra saved us all. She saved you. She saved me. She loved you and you deny her love. And he goes in to stab you. Citra throws herself in front of you, dying in the process. And she's like, don't leave me. Jason's like, I'm sorry. And he leaves. Dennis is just there like, what the fuck did I do? And the ending of the game, I'm going to play the monologue. I'm not going to try to say it. I'm not going to try to talk about it. But it's a bittersweet ending, and it shows that Jason he's fucking devastated at all the shit that he's done. Because the thing that video games mostly don't try to capture is that, yeah, characters kill other villains and they kill other enemies to go through from point A to point B. But it does take a fucking toll on the human psyche, normally. And it did in Far Cry 3, and they did it perfectly. Far Cry 3 was so good that they just copy-pasted it in Far Cry 4, and then did a worse job at copy-pasting in Far Cry 5. We got a shitty game. And New Dawn was worse than it was slightly better than 5, but still a bad game. Far Cry 3, from a gameplay point of view and a story aside, a very fucking fun game. A very, very, very nicely made game. The game also explains why Jason can shoot a gun. Like in one of the Fever Dreams, you can hear Grant's voice saying like, you're a natural with a gun and what have you. So the game tries to explain that, which is nice. No games tend to do that at all. Still doesn't explain how he can professionally handle the guns and shoot a bow and arrow, which needs training on its own, but...
I can't come back from this little monster. I can feel the anger inside me. But I am still somewhere inside me more than that. Better than that.
So that was Far Cry 3. At the beginning of the video I said that it may have been the last good first-person shooter. I was kinda right. Thing is, after Far Cry 3 came out, Ubisoft was like, well, that game worked out so much, so we're just gonna copy-paste that into Far Cry 4. We're gonna copy-paste that into Far Cry 5 and New Dawn. So you ended up having 4, which is an okay game, 5 was such a shitty game, New Dawn, which was a bit better than 5, but still a shitty game. Now, what does that mean to the FPS genre? What does that mean to that game? Well, to me, Far Cry 3 was the beginning of the end. Because after that, we barely had any first-person shooters, which were kind of like, holy shit, are such an amazing story, their character which is so interesting. A bummer after Far Cry 3, which is Ubisoft decided to make their main character not talkative as much as Jason Brody. In 4, AJ barely speaks, and then the rest of the games, the character doesn't talk at all. Which was it was a good and a bad choice, because Jason Brody has his own character, and it gives more depth to the story. It shows you how much his character is changing. Because as much as a first-person genre games are trying to aim at making the player feel like the main character, doesn't mean that you can't go in depth the way that Far Cry 3 did. Far Cry 3 had its flaws. Does that mean that the game is bad? Absolutely not. It's one of my favorite games of all time. But the thing is, I haven't played a first-person shooter after that, I haven't played many first-person shooters after that, in which I was like, holy shit. After Far Cry 3, we didn't have many of those. And that's not to say that we didn't have behemoths of games, because those don't come along a lot. But what I mean is that we never got many more, as much as we had before, good first-person shooters, because they came in bigger quantity before, and now they're not. I mean, I can't even think of a good one, a recently good one, to pop off in my head. Like a single player with a good story. So Far Cry 3 really marked the beginning of the end for me. And not in a good way. Maybe we can come back from it. Hopefully with Cyberpunk we can come back. So yeah, that was Far Cry 3. That was a video about Far Cry 3, a game that means a lot to me. There's a lot to delve into that game. I try to keep it short as possible, because there's a lot of fucking ground to cover. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like. Subscribe if you're liking my content as of now. Discord's in the description as always, and I will see you guys in the next video. As always, stay safe. Peace.